Hi everyone, welcome to this webinar from the Energy Learning Network. We are just going to wait a minute or so for more people to join. We had a lot of people registered for this, over 200, so we are expecting more people to be joining, so if you just bear with us a while. And do feel while you're waiting, please if you could rename yourself using the participants tab, just to show what organisation you're from, that'd be great. Okay, well, we still have people joining, but I think I'll make a start just because we have a lot of people and a lot of speakers to cover. Some really good speakers today, a lot of content. So just before I do, I will just introduce you to the people from the Energy Learning Network that are on the call. From Ashton, Emma Jones, Matt Aluwalia, and Femi Hawaii. And then from Community Energy Scotland, we have Dara Keenahan, and we have Joseph Davies-Coates from Community Energy England. And there's probably a number of others as well, but that's some of the people from the network that are on the call. So we are recording, which has already been set up. And then if you could put yourself on mute, if you're not already on mute. And if you do have questions for our speakers, please use the chat function. We will be having a breakout session within this meeting, and we will be observing Chatham House rules, which means that we won't be publicising anything, attributing anything to you, to your name. So feel free to be open about sharing things, as comfortable as you are doing that. Yeah, we've got the slides in front. If we could just go to the first slide, please, Emma.
Sorry, it's not moving for me now.
It's always the way, always technical issues. So I don't think I can move it either, actually.
I've got
Anyway, it doesn't
completely
matter. That's fine. We'll wait for it to wake up and take some action. So just to say about the Energy Learning Network, so we have been going for around just over a year now. It's a lottery-funded network, and you can see the partners there. Community Energy Wales, Community Energy England, Community Energy Scotland, Action Renewables Northern Ireland, and Centre for Sustainable Energy, and ourselves at Ashton. And what it's about really is fostering community energy, helping it to grow, but particularly bringing lessons from across the UK, and also creating an enabling environment for community energy. And that's really where webinars like this come in, because it's trying to support councils, build capacity around supporting community energy and seeing what community energy can do. So yeah, next slide, please, Emma. So this is the third in a series of 3 workshops, which are looking at retrofit at the demand side of the demand reduction side of community energy. Often people think of community energy in terms of generation projects, big solar, that kind of thing. But of course, demand reduction is equally important. And the first 2 workshops are very much focused around grant-funded schemes, so a lot of government grant funding through the Warm Homes grant, and ECO to fund retrofit. Those 2 workshops focused on the role of community energy in those programmes, whereas this is looking more broadly retrofit by those who don't necessarily qualify for those grant schemes. So next slide, please. So so quick run through of the agenda. So we've got, as I mentioned, some really good speakers, really pleased to have secured them all. So we have Justin from Plymouth Energy Community, We have two speakers from Oxford City Council and Oxfordshire. We will have a breakout session, as I mentioned, a short break, and then we're going to hear from Cartrevy Clwyd's retrofit service from Wales, and Your Energy, which is the York Retrofit one-stop shop. So that is the agenda for this afternoon. Just before we start with speakers, I just wanted to hand over to my colleague Emma, who is going to make a few general updates around the network.
Thanks so much, Cara. So very warm welcome to all of you. For those who know the Energy Learning Network, Philip Morris, who was running the network, has moved on to pastures new, getting involved firsthand in delivering community energy projects. So I'm managing the network for Ashton while we're in the process of recruiting a new manager who'll be in post very soon. So just a quick update on other things happening with the Energy Learning Network. One of the key things is that we've got applications invited at the moment for 2 lots of £3,000 worth of funding to support regional community energy support networks. There's a very simple application form, which my colleague Femi will share in the chat. The deadline for filling that in is this Friday. It should only take you about 5 minutes. We've only had one application so far. So if you are interested, if it's something you're already doing and you want some more support for, or if it's something you'd be interested in setting up in your area in terms of bringing together community energy groups to share learning, do please put in an application because we'd love to support you. And then very excitingly, hot off the press on our website today, 2 brand new case studies that focus on how local authorities can work collaboratively with community energy groups to really support and help accelerate the development of community energy in their areas. So we've got one case study which is about the London Borough of Southwark and the Community Energy Fund that they've set up, and 2 of the community energy groups that have been supported through that fund to develop projects in Southwark in South London. And then the second case study is a fantastic partnership between Three Rivers District Council and JUICE, Grand Union Community Energy. A really nice example of an incredibly impactful collaborative partnership. So my colleague is just sharing links to those case studies. So do take a look at those, share them with anyone who would be interested. If you need to help make the case for community energy with partners or with others within your council, these should help. And then finally, just to plug a couple more events coming up from the Energy Learning Network, which again will share links to the sign up pages for those in the chat. So next week, we've got a webinar about building a business case for community energy generation projects. So that's really for those delivering community energy or working very closely in partnership with those who are doing that. A brilliant lineup of organisations that have got small and larger scale solar and wind projects off the ground, how they secured funding, how they dealt with debt finance, how they built the business case and things like power purchase agreements. So do come along to that or share a link to that with those who might be interested. And finally, as Cara mentioned, the Energy Learning Network is a partnership of fabulous organisations, and one of our partners, the Centre for Sustainable Energy, has an event coming up on the 4th of November, which might be of interest to you, which is around delivering energy advice in the community. So we're sharing the sign-up link to that as well. That's everything from me. Thanks very much, Cara.
Thank you very much, Emma. And before we hand over to the first speaker, a quick poll, if we could, just to get some initial information about you. Yeah, if you could please complete that if you can see it. If someone could confirm that they can see that. Emma, is that?
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah, all good.
Lovely, lovely. And the reason we do this is just to find out who's attending the webinars, and we'll have a quick poll at the end just to see, get some feedback on how useful you found it and what you might be doing with the information you gain. So thank you very much for taking the time to complete it. Really, really helpful. Okay, I'm going to leave that open a little bit while we start our first session. So delighted to hand over to Justin from Plymouth Energy Community, and you'll be hearing about the great work that they have done and are doing on retrofit. Justin.
I'm just going to share my slides a moment. Forgive me if I'm coughing a bit. It's that time of year, isn't it?
Yeah.
Back to school and everything. So, I'm on one screen as well, so bear with me while I bring this up.
It's just coming up.
The slides are just providing a little bit of Slides are just providing a little bit of background content. Really, most of what I'm going to say is going to be verbal. So there's only a few slides really just to structure that. So I work for Plymouth Energy Community. I run our retrofit services team. So I'm going to talk to you about a community-led facilitation model. And I kind of considered whether to go into the detail of how we do things here. And I don't think that, either 10 minutes or this is the right place. What I really wanted to talk about in terms of local authority relationships is the kind of cultures that led to our organisation, but also our retrofit team being here, being successful, doing some really good work in Plymouth. So tendency looking at kind of community-led facilitation, and particularly, firstly, I'm going to look at grant-led projects, so the HUGs and the LAD projects. How do you make those community-led? And does a community-led HUG or a LAD project mean we're talking about something that's very lovely but not really achieving very much? I would never say that, but I think there are people who may think that. Well, our experience at Plymouth, we've been running a really community energy-led model of delivering HUG and LAD projects for 5 years now. In that time, we've improved about 390 homes, puts us in the top quartile in the country of local authorities for a number of measures delivered. And we've managed to do that, as you'd expect, with really good community kind of support for that. We've got a really high satisfaction rating, 4.8 out of 5. And we managed to achieve lots of added benefit to the residents that have come through that programme. 1 in 7 of those have accessed wider fuel poverty support alongside it. That model as well, actually basing much more of that customer journey in being delivered by a community organisation and much less of it by installers, has also had lots of other benefits. We've been 11% cheaper than the average for delivering HUG and LAD schemes over that time. Each individual scheme has kind of measured roughly about the same, 9 to 11% cheaper. And we managed to spend 76% of the £4 million which was spent in Plymouth within our local supply chain. So I think partially I want to talk about our community-led model that's helped grant schemes and how that's grown out from there. But also there's something here to say about this. That there's a story here of why that's been allowed to happen in Plymouth and why I don't think it's allowed to happen in other places, and what the local authority have done in Plymouth that have really facilitated the growth of our service and a really good model. But I just want to take a moment to sort of tell that story before I go on to a little bit of how that service has developed. And to do that, we're going to go back to the start of PEC. This was 12 years ago. And the council really are facing, and I'm going to speak for them, and they may not say things in these words, but they're facing years and years and years of cuts. And they've got ambitions about fuel poverty, and they've got ambitions about renewable energy in the city, and they're seeing that those ambitions will be dashed by these cuts. And so they took an approach here of saying, well, social enterprise might be the way forwards here. How can we support social enterprise in the city to take forward some of that ambition really on our behalf? One of the things they did in the first few years for that was take a field in northern Plymouth that nobody was going to do anything with because it's next to a sewage treatment plant and a munitions yard, and say, what can we do with this field? And they actually gave that field, or sold it to £1 for a local organisation in that area who support people in poverty in that area. That organisation rented it to a PEC for 25 years. We put a load of solar panels on there, 4 megawatts of solar. And what we've got here is from the council sort of giving away an asset. We've got a local community organisation supporting people in poverty receiving hundreds of thousands of pounds over 25 years, just as kind of core costs. And we've got Plymouth Energy Community also receiving our fuel poverty services, receiving donations as well, which in the last year were hundreds of thousands of pounds. This is an example of the council saying, well, we're not going to be able to do that thing ourselves, but we can facilitate something happening. We can support a community energy group to grow and have capacity developed. And I think we're probably a little bit more familiar with that model in renewables, but I think in Plymouth what we've done is kind of moved that onto a sort of retrofit space as well. And the story here of how that's developed is, back when Green Homes local grants started to come out 5 years ago, we were sort of scratching our head, we can't go back to what Green Deal communities was we can't go back to these kind of single contractor procurement models where contractors seem to have all the power and sort of deliver really poor quality of both work and customer service for a very high price. Really was our sense of that. And we went to the council and we said, we think we've got another model here. I think I've got another model where all you need to do is just give out grants to customers, and our job will be to support that customer through a journey as a community energy organisation. And we'll deliver as a part of that. We'll deliver all the kind of grant compliance, all the data collection. We'll do most of the assessments. We'll help the customers around decisions about what goes into the homes. And we're just going to bring the installers in to do quoting and installing. That's all they're going to do. Keep their job as simple as possible. And that's what we've been delivering basically for 5 years, slightly different formats, different ways along the line. But what we found in that is installers love that model. They don't want to do all the, tier one contractors are not interested in working in our scheme, and that's okay. I'm not interested in them working on our scheme. But a lot of the local installers, a lot of their kind of regional installers, they're delighted with a model where all they're asked to do is actually not even quote half the time. We work off framework prices a lot. So just to come and do the installations, really. And they reflect that with lower prices. They reflect that by listening to us when we tell them how we want them to serve and how we want them to treat customers. And we work quite closely alongside the installers and the customers to get people through these schemes. That's our grant-led retrofit services in a nutshell. So, why am I saying that, and why did I bring in the community energy? Because I think it's a similar thing. This was not the easiest way for Plymouth City Council to deliver a retrofit programme. It's quite a risk. That was a different model. It was a model that was going to test the administration parts of their budget. But what they recognised in that is not that it was the best way to deliver that scheme that they had 5 years ago, but that they could see the benefit of this in the long term. They could see the benefit of building this capacity in Plymouth, and that capacity being there after the end of that programme for the next programme and the one after that. And over these years, our team's built marketing specialism, data specialism, technical specialism, got some really experienced advisors who know to how to support residents through these schemes. And we are able to and ready in Warm Homes Local Grant if we can get enough funding coming through to really scale up that model. But as well as that, we've been able to use that basis and that skills we've built to develop other services. And crucially, we had a £1.4 million lead project working with other agencies across Devon and Cornwall, really developing a model for able to pay advice that focuses on actually advice rather than technical support, not necessarily assessments, that's available, but actually what can you do by just giving people some time with a trained advisor to discuss what they want to do with their home and to help frame that. And what we found is our home visits on average got people installing about £3,400 worth of things in their home. So those nice discussions in the home didn't need to do technical surveys, didn't need to do really resource-intensive support. And so we're developing that service out, and we are in the process now, as an organisation, of kind of growing our influence across the city, not just in retrofit, but in other areas. And we've got a strategy in place to launch or to migrate our services into a properly functioning one-stop shop for Plymouth, across both fuel poor and grant-led, across both able to pay and grant-led programmes, trying to get 500 homes a year installed by 2028. And that has all come from the council saying, let's not just do the best way of delivering this project. Let's try and support something growing in the city, some capacity growing that's going to serve the city in the long run. And that's where I've got to. I think that's my talk.
Thank you very much, Justin. And there will be an opportunity to ask questions. We'll have 10 minutes at the end when we've heard from our next speakers, who are Emily and Dale from Oxford City Council and Oxfordshire. So over to you. I'm not sure who's up first, whether it's Emily or Dale.
Hi. Yes, I think Dale is now here.
Yes.
Good. All right. Dale, I will share because we've tested it already. Dale is going to go first. And are you there, Dale? There you are.
Yes.
Hi. I'll move slides on for you.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Yeah, I've got the first couple. So yeah, I'm Dale. I head up the retrofit team at Oxfordshire County Council, and have lots of touch points with community groups across Oxfordshire through thermal imaging, training delivery, and such like. So yeah, we've got a couple of examples sort of projects here today just to highlight where community groups have been absolutely instrumental in delivery of projects and things, and sort of similar a little bit to Justin as well, with the capital grant schemes that we've delivered. Very similar, LAD, HUG, Warm Homes Local Grant. We've kind of used community groups as well. It's helped community groups because they have created the interest through the work that they've done in their local community, which they know far better than I would. And they've been able, therefore, to signpost people to real, tangible, not just a sticking plaster approach, but significant funding for improvements. So anyway, onto the slide pack that Emily has kindly put together. The first one was just to sort of outline, and this is by no means an exhaustive list of all the barriers to scaling energy delivery, but yeah, certainly sort of lack of interest, lack of trust, lack of understanding, lack of money, lack of support, and there are others, as I say, in terms of the grid capacity, for example, for electrification of space heating, hot water, even transport, and such like, skills for delivery of quality sort of work, etc. But many of the things that you see on the screen there, at least the local authority has a role to help to overcome, because whilst we may not be liked for the number of potholes in the roads, this is Oxfordshire County Council, not Oxford City Council, since we're the transport authority, and indeed any sort of positive thing that we put out about kind of community energy or projects like that, do tend to be jumped on sort of, well, why are you spending money on retrofitting of homes when, fix the potholes in the road and all this sort of thing. However, we are certainly proven to be a trusted partner when it comes to running projects and such like, to engage the community far more widely. So we're overcoming that. So, Clean Heat Streets, first of all, this was a Department for Energy Security Net Zero funded heat pump ready programme, one of 4 that sort of progressed through to the latter stages. And I think Clean Heat Streets was the only one that actually went through to capital installation stage, where we got 31 air source heat pumps installed. So as you can see there, the kind of purpose of the project was to deliver at scale in a very defined small area on a couple of kind of low voltage lines from a substation. So this is where the community really kind of came into its own, and it was one of the key reasons why Rose Hill in Oxford was our chosen area for this, and I would cite as one of the absolute reasons why this project went ahead when all of the others in the UK fell through various previous stages. So yeah, we are far behind other countries in delivery of heat pumps, but we know that we must urgently remove or enable people to remove themselves from fossil fuels if we're serious about the climate and the ecological emergency. And this has been a fantastic project to sort of galvanise and gravitate around, because it's also got people thinking about clearly their fabric of the property, so insulation improvements, solar PV to contribute towards their increased electricity bills now, having got rid of the gas meter and such like. But our hyper-local engagement and word of mouth really, and through, it was Rose Hill and Iffley Low Carbon Community Group and all of the connections that they had. As I say, it's really important that the community groups know their local area far better than we do. So introduction to the Oxfordshire Asian Women's Voice, for example, to start to overcome some of the language barriers that we had to get into the community and deploy, as I say, at scale, these air source heat pumps. And the other thing that really worked well, led by members of the community group, I hasten to add, was setting up these show homes. So real people in the community being installed early, and then being willing to open up their home so that other people can look around it. That was really instrumental as well. So yeah, just a few observations that I was going to say from our side as a local authority. As I said, an excellent retrofit measure to run a project around. Community engagement, fine. Click through all these, Emily. Yes, noted that there was some issues with the occupants' use of the new system. So again, the kind of educational piece was and is really crucial here. Otherwise, you can have a perfect system which isn't being used well, and of course then it gets bad press that people are struggling to get adequate warmth, etc., etc. So that was certainly noted. Independent assessments indicate that the heat loss survey is generally overly cautious, so led to oversizing of units, and clearly where there is a lack of network capacity, that then can affect neighbours' ability to install a heat pump, because you're taking kind of too much of that spare capacity up. And a relatively slim margin of safety in terms of the risk of leaving residents with increased energy bills. I think if you give one more click, Emily, does it bring up the... Yes, that this is a sort of mantra of things that the retrofit team abide by, and the fourth one down is essentially that no one should be materially worse off as a result of the service that we've given them, essentially. And that includes increasing bills. So we have to be really careful, obviously, with the spark gap between the between gas pricing and electricity, such that a good percentage, more than 20% of the electricity bill is subsidizing gas, which was right in the 80s and 90s when we were burning vast amounts of methane to generate electricity, but certainly isn't as fair now. And if we want to be serious about the transition to net zero, then we must find a way that's fair and equitable of removing that subsidy, such that electricity prices reduce, and therefore we can go ahead with electrifying heating and such like, without such a risk of increased bills. I think I've taken all of my time and possibly more on that bit. So Emily, how's that line?
Thanks, Dale. Yeah, so I'm Emily Green, Oxford City Council. Emily Green, green by name, green by nature. So I'm going to talk about another project that we ran. So this is called A House Like Mine, and it was funded by the MCS Foundation primarily, but with also money from the County Council, thanks Dale, and also Lucy Group, who are a local developer. Now, it was part of something called the Zero Carbon Oxfordshire Partnership, which I won't go into detail here for time reasons, but essentially they are all the big emitters of the city have come together to they sort of sign a declaration and collaborate to help us to achieve our net zero by 2040 target as a city. And so this is part of the retrofit sprint group element of that. So what was the project? What did we want to do? We wanted to create 12 common house archetypes from across the city, undertake whole house plans on those 12 houses, and turn those into case studies and engagement materials, and also to have a community engagement plan. So we recruited an organisation called Cozy Homes Oxfordshire to help us to create these materials. And Cozy Homes Oxfordshire are a combination of two organisations: Retrofit Works, who are a cooperative of retrofit professionals, essentially installers, and the Low Carbon Hub, which is a social enterprise, and they work across the city and county to facilitate low carbon action, and very much community focused. So who are we wanting to target with our engagement materials? Well, so the able to pay market, landlords and the fuel pool, these materials actually work. They actually work for all three, and I'll explain a little bit why as I go through. But one of the sort of principles that came out, which I'll talk about in a minute, was make retrofit the norm. Everyone's doing it. And so this is where the able to pay market or the willing to pay market are actually quite useful. So you can get stories out there and showcase how people have done things, then that's really nice. So they're primarily digital resources, which is hosted on the Cozy Homes Oxfordshire website. But if I just slip back to this first, as you can see, there's a QR code. So this flyer is the only kind of physical thing that, and people then click through to a digital resource, which can be printed out. I'll just show you what they look like. So they're four pages. The first page shows you the house and sort of introduction to the particular house, but also the person who lives in it. So we wanted this to be a house like mine and people like me. So we tried to get a cross section of people, you know, a family, an older couple, a single person, student, a landlord. Now with only 12, it was a little tricky. We didn't, for example, get a good representation of, like, you know, ethnic groups, for example, but with only 12, it was a little tricky. So the first page is a bit of an overview. The second one is, again, it's still a kind of an overview of the kind of things that you can do, but we really wanted to draw out that this isn't just about reducing carbon emissions or lowering your energy bills. We wanted to talk about comfort and health and disruption as well, but given that the health impacts of retrofit are really going to be the, you know, are arguably the most important part of retrofit. So the third page is the kind of beef of it all, where the whole house plan. And originally the design was each line of these things. I'm sure you can't read this, but it's, you know, loft insulation, front door, new front door, you know, this kind of thing. And then as you get further down, you have different kinds of measures. So initially, it was all these different measures all the way down to the bottom, and then at the bottom it had like a kind of total, and then like £85,000. So you got to an A, but it's going to cost you 85 grand, and we're like, okay, that's not going to work as an engagement material. That's going to have the opposite effect. So then we thought, well, how do we use this really, really important whole house plan approach, but how do we tell the story which actually enables people to? So we thought about what the principles here were, which was actually the whole point of a whole house plan is showing you the order in which to do things, so you don't have to do it all at once. Let's make this manageable. Let's break it down. So then we were talking about, well, the really important bit in our landlord engagement, for example, is how do you get to an EPCC? And then what are the impacts of that? So the top part in the kind of yellowy beige cream color it would get you to an EPCC, and then it says at this point, if you install a solar PV, this would be the impact. At this point, if you install a heat pump, this would be the impact. And at this point, if you did both, this would be the impact. Because we wanted to demonstrate to people that they really don't have to do everything all at once. And then if you want to go further for even greater comfort and health and better carbon reductions and so on and so forth, this is where you get down to your A and your very small bill. So they work for us on a number of levels. As I said, we have 50% of our housing in Oxford is private residential. So landlords are a really important group of people we need to be engaging with here. So this works well for us there. In terms of grant funding, the little tick icon you can see there says grant funding is available. So wherever an air source heat pump is mentioned, it's got a little sticker on it because a boiler upgrade scheme exists. And then the final page is where you can get more information, which takes you to the website where there's tons more information. And so that's what they look like. The principles I mentioned already. So the project also included this engagement plan on how are we going to use these and what kind of messaging do we need to surround this with. So make it the norm, everyone's doing it. This is really important. This is where the able to pay market are really useful, the willing to pay market really useful. And the case studies, building trust. Again, Dale's already mentioned, it's just so important. So sell the vision, but actually also focus on that first step, making it actually achievable and easy. So then making the first steps as easy as possible, and then keep nudging and walking alongside people on the journey. Now, this is the problem that we've got. This is the very resource heavy part. So that's tricky. So then key messages alongside it. There is financial support available. This is an investment. It's about health. It's about your comfort. Whole house plans are important. And you don't need to do it all at once. And then I've also developed like key messages for landlords that are going to be a bit more finance centered and like damp and mold, for example. So we have a whole different set of messaging for landlords. So the impact, when in the first couple of weeks after we launched this earlier this year, there were 2,500 hits on the website, 2,000 clicks through from our Facebook advert, 368 clicks through from our newsletter. We've got a network of 3,000 landlords via our licensing team, and they've all had seen these materials, and I've presented to over 100 landlords at our landlord forums. The letting agents in Oxford have all seen this and how they can talk to people about what they're doing. We've done a lot, and one of the really nice things was also there was a project which kind of was a precursor to this project. They've actually called Charbury Home Comforts. They've actually redesigned theirs based on this because it is such an easy way to communicate with people about the process. But hard to measure if these materials are leading to action. We're still trying to find ways to capture that. To date, web clicks from the House Like Mine web pages onto the retrofit works you don't have to do anything through them, but it's kind of handed to you on a plate. They haven't seen anything turn into actual action. So that's still something we're working on. And then just really quickly, the kind of working together we do, this isn't directly linked to A House Like Mine, but it's happening this weekend and I'm terribly excited about it, which is Oxford Preservation Trust have an open doors event every year. It's huge, like BMW open their doors, and you can go to the fire station and it's a great event. But as part of that event, through an organisation called Energy Saving Homes, 30 properties are opening their doors to for people to come in and have a look. So this is that make it the norm, everyone's doing it, is a really, really powerful message. So that's that project, and I'm going to hand over to Dale again.
Thanks, Emily. So yeah, I've only got a couple of minutes to talk about a really exciting project that I could talk about for hours. So I'm going to have to skip through lots of this. But essentially, recently, just over a year ago, we launched a phone application called the Energy Saver app for Oxfordshire, which brought to life half-hourly smart meter data to residents. It's a free app. And did lots of fun things with that. So there was some AI learning at the back end, which looked at the data. So if somebody had a smart meter for the last, I think 13 months was the maximum we could go back through their data. Then when they downloaded the app and connected their smart meter to it, the permissions to it, then this AI, which we call the Intelligent Smart Energy Engine, or IC, because every project has to have a good acronym. So that was ours. It would analyze the data and bring to life sort of energy tips, which were really specific to that person. There's also tariff switching, because as soon as the app knows, accurate energy use, then unlike a comparison site where it just sort of says what's your annual, gas bill or whatever, we knew kind of usage and time of day usage. So the time of use tariffs and things come into their own. But the really exciting part then was to deliver retrofit to, let's say, the able or willing to contribute. Emily said sort of willing to pay, because there's this sector of people that absolutely are able to pay, but also need to be willing. But in this case, there's a huge bell curve of people that sit from the kind of eligibility for Warm Homes Local Grant, let's say, at the bottom end of the scale. And there's the kind of other end of the scale, the uber able to pay, who wouldn't miss sort of spending, £20,000 on retrofitting their home. What about everybody else in the middle? So this was our attempt to engage. And again, the link back to community groups is that this is proven to be a real enabling tool that community groups can say, well, download the app. Here's a QR code on this banner, at our stand. Download the app, connect your smart meter, and it's suddenly, your energy is brought to life, and we can have a conversation around that. So the on subscription part of it was we launched with solar PV with battery storage, because that really works. It creates an income stream where at the moment it's a blank roof, so it really works. £40 a month, typical sort of subscription payment. Install fully covered, and the optimization, etc., and the ongoing maintenance. So when the battery is suitably depleted, or there's a problem with the inverter or anything, then that is replaced such that the system continues to function. All of that delivered on that monthly subscription, so £480 a year, £40 a month, where from the data that we can see, we can show that the savings are going to be sort of, I think £700 was probably about the minimum where we made the offer. So really good margin for error to make it a complete no-brainer, and we've seen savings upwards of sort of £1,200 or £1,300 for some residents still paying £480 a month. I've not been following the slides at all. I've just been completely
just 1 minute, Dale, if that's okay. Just
exactly. Yeah. I think skip through the rest of the slides, Emily, because I think that's essentially what I want to say. Yeah, optimization was right. This slide's just sort of gives a bit of an overview where we are at the moment. So we launched the app in June 2024. We've now got close to 10,000 downloads. 200, I think actually we're on about 244 solar PV installs to date. But you can see the data there based on 210. So over the time, and we had our first 2 installs prior to Christmas. So the vast majority have been done this year in 2025 onwards. So over 50 megawatt hours generated this summer. It has been a bit of a bumper summer, which has been fantastic. And yeah, predicted net savings after the subscription of £375. But as I say, we've done a lot better than that in most cases. Next slide, Emily. I think that's about it. Keep next one. And next one, that's all our engagement sort of ways with community groups. When these slides are shared, then you'll have a bit more detail that we don't have time for now. Next slide. There we go. I think we'll just end with the contact details. So my LinkedIn is on there, and mine and Emily's email address. Do reach out with us with any kind of follow-ups or anything else like that. But otherwise, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Really inspirational work. I think a couple of things first from Justin's presentation. Interesting that SMEs, local SMEs, find it kind of easier to engage with Plymouth Energy community than they might do on some of the bigger schemes. And then really coming across was that trust that community groups have in talking to residents from both presentations. So there's a question here. I know some of the questions have been answered in the chat. Question from Caitlin at Gloucestershire. For landlords who won't be paying bills because they'll be paid for by tenants, what have you found the incentives to be for landlords to retrofit beyond minimum EPC? So perhaps a question for Emily there.
Oh, just hang on. I'm trying to. Hi there. Oh yeah, go Dale.
I was just going to say, to give you time to come in, Emily. The Warm Homes Local Grant is therefore a fantastic opportunity because landlords get their first property fully funded, where they've got eligible tenants, and obviously their EPC is a D or below. And I think, Emily, as you said in the presentation, a vast majority of landlords in Oxford City only have one property.
Yes,
so
that's right.
they would get that fully funded 50% contribution for
Yeah.
properties.
But other incentives, well, damp and mold is a really big one actually. So we do quite a lot of messaging with landlords on the benefits of an air source heat pump, because air source heat pumps keep a more stable temperature. You don't get peaks and troughs. You don't get cold and hot. So the more stable temperature can significantly reduce damp and mold, which is a big deal for landlords, especially in somewhere very damp like Oxford. It's very wet here. Lots of rivers. Also, the other kind of messaging that we do with landlords is around the we're working with trying to find an estate agent who will do like property valuations and post to give, because there is, we don't have enough evidence locally that shows that, the increase in the value in your property of retrofit, although it has been shown in other places, but we're trying to build up some local data on that. So in terms of licensing, so the housing health and safety rating system, so excess cold is one of they have a legal duty to make sure that people aren't suffering from that, and so that's how we can get involved with this kind of engagement material as well. So I work with our licensing people mainly on that.
Thank you very much. So we're going to go into breakout groups now. So the presentation's slightly longer than scheduled, but some really fantastic material. So we're going to go into breakout rooms. What we're going to be talking about in those is really to understand what you might be doing as a council or a community group, working together on retrofit, where the successes are, where the lessons learned are. So we often find that people that participate in the breakout groups are the most useful part, because you learn from other people. So do stick around for those, and then we've got some fantastic speakers afterwards. So I'm going to open those up now. Hopefully you'll be in with one of our facilitators, and we'll see you back in about 20 minutes.
Hi, Cara. I'm not sure what happened. I was brought back to the main room.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so was I.
Was I?
Right. Okay. So who have I got back? Let me just see. Who's Gustavo? Right. It says you're assigned. So why are you not?
I went into group 6 and then suddenly I was whisked back.
Okay.
I wasn't.
Move you back in
2.
again. So let's see if that. Okay, so just if you go into, can you see the breakout rooms? I'm just wondering if you're able to. Looks like you've been reassigned, and then who else is not assigned?
Alan Mills rang at Mansted again, went to the room and then was whipped back again.
Okay, fine.
Teleported.
Okay.
I can see your sign saying join breakout room. Is that the one you mean?
Yes, yeah, if you tried that. So let's move you to
I might be back later, but here goes.
Okay. Who else? Gustavo, you're still here.
Yeah, I was taken to room number 6, but as soon as I got in, I was returned to the main room for some reason.
Move you to 4, see if that happens.
Okay.
I'm yet to be assigned.
Hello, is anyone else there? I've got a list here. If you're on an iPad, I slid the screen across and there's 7 participants together. Hello?
Hi, Lisa. I think there's been an issue. I've been assigned to 3 different breakout rooms, but as soon as I get in, I am, taken out and brought to the main room. So I believe there might be a glitch.
Yeah, I on an iPad, and as I flicked, I slid the screen across, and I can see 7 participants. Are you Gustavo?
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah,
I'm on a laptop, so I don't know what happened on my end.
No, so I think that we can't see each other, but I don't know if anyone else can hear. But also on the list is Alex Cameron. They want to unmute themselves, and Christine Dunkley and Fireflies.
No, that's a bot. That's a bot.
And Laura Davies.
I can hear you. I think I also have the same issue. I haven't been assigned to a room actually.
Yeah, so I think we're all assigned together, but we haven't been connected somehow.
Oh, I see.
So there's 3 of us and Laura Davies, Wales Energy Team, that is unmuted. So I don't know if we just want to chat. If you start your video, I've started mine, but it's not. I think there's a technical error somewhere.
Yeah, I'm having issues with my video as well. Because maybe it's because I don't have the Zoom downloaded as an app. I'm not sure, but my video is not coming on. But I'm happy to chat.
Yeah, should we just chat? Just looks like there's you and me who are the only ones out of the 7 that are unmuted. and Christine Dunkley and Laura Davis, but they don't seem to be hearing us. Can you hear me okay? Are you?
Yes, I can hear you okay.
Hello, Lade.
Yeah, it's Lola D.
Lola D. Oh, that's lovely. Well, I'm at the top corner. I'm Lisa Matthews, and I'm from Hadley Environmental Action Team.
Okay. I'm from Walton Forest.
Lovely. And so, are you from the council?
Yes.
Oh, lovely. So, is there anything that's happening for you in the retrofitting, or?
Yeah, I think they picked on the schemes that are currently running, especially for vulnerable people. I think I'm well acquainted with the Warm Homes local grants, and then there's also the energy upgrade loan that we run. But I guess my question would be, apart from like targeted homes, are there ways that we could get to homes, like just to people who are who maybe could be able to pay for the retrofitting themselves, and just ways to like target them, or other incentives that are not for the vulnerable residents?
Yeah, we're having the same question actually, because what we found is there is lots of help for vulnerable people and grants, and then there's those that can afford it that are doing it anyway, and then there's this kind of massive kind of middle section that you're talking about, which can't necessarily afford the outlay of it. Or in Suffolk we have a Lendology loan, but again they don't have the means to pay off the loan that they're borrowing each month. So we're having the same problem. How do we help those people that are in this sort of middle bracket that want to do something but can't afford to do something, or aren't eligible to do something?
Exactly.
And it sounds like you're having the same thing coming up for you too.
Yes.
Yeah, and you know, because I don't know how you feel, but the feedback is whilst electricity is still 4 times costlier than gas, people are just reverting to getting gas.
Yeah, and then that might be like, I mean, if that changes in the coming years, that would be like, what do you call it now? A stranded asset.
Yeah.
Yeah. There is that complaint of heat pump not being economical.
Yeah, because what we've heard is if you're switching from gas to a heat pump, it's still going to be more expensive.
Yeah.
It's only really if you're going from an electric heating system that the air source heat pump will be cheaper to run. And I don't know how you feel, but if we're giving people free impartial advice and we're sort of saying, oh no, this is great, please do it, and then they find their monthly energy bills are higher.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they need to know the full picture, I think.
Yeah, I really feel that too. And because we're an environmental action team and not a council, it's kind of we're giving free and partial advice. And whilst yes, we want everyone to retrofit, part of that retrofit is changing, but it does feel that if people are having gas, that is still, they've got to know, like you're saying, they've got to know that potentially their energy bills are going to be higher each month.
Yeah.
And I think until the government, I don't know how you feel, but I feel there's not like this joined up thinking and they're saying, yeah, we must have more heat pumps, but until they reduce the cost of electricity, people aren't gonna want to make the changes.
Yeah.
Because the cost of living is going up. So there's not, a lot of people are stretched already, and to sort of say, oh, well, your gas bill was £50 a month, but, even though the air source heat pump is cheaper, it might still be £80. They're going to go, what, £30 more expensive a month?
Yeah.
That's a lot over 12 months.
Yeah. Absolutely. I agree. I was gonna ask you apart from the heat pumps and the sensitivity around the electricity prices, what retrofit would you say like people are taking up the most currently in the view of like retrofit measures from your work that you do?
Yeah, well, we're doing a kind of powering down. So I've been through, we've kind of done a year through the sort of UK Power Networks Community Energy Pathways grant. We've been giving free impartial advice of how to reduce their fuel bills. So what we're doing, I've likened it to a bit like the food waste movement. I'm kind of calling it energy waste. So it's actually kind of things you can do at home that are free, so no cost and low cost. So I did some thermal imaging camera, and I found out that, say, for example, just having on an old property, you could see the radiator warmth through the wall. And just by putting some radiator foil behind the radiator will save, because you've got that thermal bridging, because the radiator heats up, it then heats the wall, and then the heat disappears, because it's not you get the cold drafts. What it is my training has been where the heat wants to heat the cold up. So some other things as well on old homes that can't have double glazing, the plastic film, things like turning down the thermostat, heating yourself rather than turning everything on, so we've been giving advice like that. The Lendology loan has meant that people that can afford to pay it back has meant that they could upgrade to have some double glazing. But the payback for double glazing is 25 years. So I think what hasn't been taken into account is the amount of carbon it takes to make all of these things.
Also, like the upstream emissions.
And some people as well, they can have perfectly good radiators and heating system, but having an air source heat pump, they've got to have bigger radiators.
Oh yes, there's that issue as well.
Yeah, and so we've got to think about, and I don't think it's been taken into consideration, how much carbon does it take to make all this new stuff, to replace stuff that actually works okay.
Yeah, the compatibility with what you already have is another issue actually.
Yeah.
I think someone is saying in the chat that they just joined.
Oh. Everybody else has got their mics on. Oh, Tudor Baker.
Hi, you're right. Yeah, sorry, I just joined. Must have missed, and I was in the first half an hour of the session, but I didn't know what the breakout session is. So apologies for joining late.
Do you know what? I don't think we.
Yeah, I think this is like the breakout session. So this is just people sharing their experience from the councils. Before everybody comes back to this room.
Okay, sure. Are you? Does everyone work at local councils? Are you local authorities, or are you from different? I suppose.
Yes, I'm from Waltham Forest Council, but Lisa works with.
I work for Hadley Environmental Action Team in Suffolk.
Okay, yeah. It was interesting hearing your insight, your experiences then about because there's so many nuances, isn't there? So towns and things like that. It's not. That's I think what struggles I find as well speaking to people about retrofit.
I don't know, Tudor, I'm having trouble hearing you because there's a bit of background noise.
Yeah. So I'm in a noisy office. So.
Oh no, that's okay. I just wasn't sure if there was a lag or something. Yeah, we were just to recap, we were just really saying, and I think we both came to the conclusion that whilst electricity is 4 times more than gas, it's going to be really hard to convince people as their energy bills are going to be higher each month, even though it's an air source heat pump. The other thing as well, we were chatting about.
Sorry, just on that, I was thinking about that recently. And is that what you find then? Is generally when someone gets a air source heat pump, is it always the case that the energy bill?
Well, electricity is 4 times the price of gas. And so if somebody has a gas system, this is some feedback we've been getting. So even though air source heat pumps are more energy efficient, the price of electricity, so if somebody had a gas central heating and changed for an air source heat pump, their energy bills may still be higher.
Yeah.
And I think if we're trying to give people impartial advice and we're trying to help them, the cost of living crisis, if their gas bill is, and then suddenly their energy bill with having the air source heat pump is higher, this might not be the case every time because it depends on the fabric of the building and how well insulated it is. So if they had a retrofit and their insulation was better, then that may not be the case. But I think there's such a lot of things that can determine sort of different outcomes.
So I suppose you've got to be really careful, haven't you? And my job is climate change communicator, really. It's not telling people the earth and saying, it's going to be great for you, it's going to reduce your bills. Not, well, it hopefully will in most cases, but some cases it might not. Electricity is more expensive.
Yeah, and we don't know. I mean, lady, you were finding that was some of the feedback you had, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, before we started speaking about heat pumps as well, we were also just speaking about the group of people kind of who are not vulnerable but who cannot pay for their kind of retrofits themselves, or like that bracket of people who might want a retrofit but are not vulnerable or eligible for it. So I think that was what we were speaking about. Okay, I think people are returning to the room. So
yeah.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, lady.
Everyone is coming back in now, so we're going to do a quick feedback. I'll just wait for everyone to join. Just coming back in now. Do put yourself on mute if you're not speaking. Okay, I think that's people back in. So right, if we just go round through the facilitators and just see what people had to say. Emma, a couple of sentences from you.
Yeah, we had lots of people in our group who were really keen to get something off the ground in this area, but hadn't really done very much as yet. But we ended up with a bit of a discussion about thermal imaging cameras and how they can be an incredible engagement tool as a starting point if you've got community energy groups or community groups that you're working with. If you can provide a bank of thermal imaging cameras and some instructions on how to use them, that's a great way to start getting households involved who might then be able to go on and install bigger measures. And we got some advice from a council or about a council that's got some good resources to share on that. So we'll see if we can access those and share those in the material that we send around after this session. Thanks.
Thank you, Emma. And Matt?
Hi, Cara. Yeah, we had a really nice discussion in our group. one nice bit to share. So we're talking about how to do effective communications to encourage people to reduce energy demands, but also to do things like servicing appliances and boilers and things like that to keep things ticking away. And one idea that was raised was kind of quick win schemes, which I think has happened in York. So advising on low cost energy measures to kind of build trust with community groups, get them, with residents, get people saving money and having slightly warmer homes as a mechanism to then engaging further. And it sort of builds on what the Plymouth presentation was talking about earlier in terms of the clear role of community groups here. If you're already more trusted and you're kind of known in the community, you're perhaps really well placed to do some of the communication around these quick wins. But if anyone does have any other communication examples or toolkits or things that's been published that your group or council has done, do please pop it in the chat. It'd be great to see that.
Thank you very much, Matt. And Dara, can't see Dara for the moment, but Dara, if you could.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, good conversation. Some of the things coming out, local authorities found working with community groups helped in terms of levels of trust and being able to send out messages in different ways and it kind of in that more personal way, so they weren't always hearing from the council. There was comments around sort of how best to engage with householders and shifting, maybe slightly away from the kind of environmental aspect and more towards or emphasizing the health and financial impacts of retrofit and this kind of immediate benefits to people, the kind of like the immediate what's in it for me, and that being quite a good way to frame it for certain groups of people. And one question was around PAS 2030 standard and having to use accredited contractors, and that being quite an onerous process to go through for smaller suppliers.
Yes.
And whether we thought maybe the speaker from Plymouth might have some insights into that.
Okay, we'll see if we get time for that. If you, Justin, if you're on, just drop something in the chat because I know we're running slightly behind. But Justin, if you could just feedback from your group, and if you can answer that question quickly, great. Thank you.
So we had a really good conversation. Lots of different people from different backgrounds, really, in terms of councils and community groups, worked really well. So in terms of councils' kind of perspective, what's been working well, we had another one for actually just with new community energy groups working with thermal imaging and how that kind of quite resident-focused advice program starting out has worked well. Had experience of kind of given of actually being cheaper sometimes to deliver some programs with community energy groups than it would be through normal routes. So there's actually some real hard-nosed advantages for councils in that space. Bit of a discussion about how the really, really good case for councils of kind of investing in this space is often likely to be made in public health as much as it is in climate, and that needs to be a clear thought. And some experience from Emily around actually a position where there's sort of multiple community groups all trying to vie for similar work, and actually a need to sort of carve some space out for sort of some discussions around a framework for how community energy groups come together in meeting the climate emergency need. And also some experience of a kind of small, a new kind of entry into the market as kind of community energy group, looking at the retrofit space, really struggling to deal with councils a council that is pretty close to bankrupt and has very limited ability to engage. And so how do you solve that challenge really in terms of getting some of the support you might need in that space?
Thanks, Justin. I'll probably, we'll leave it there just because of time. Just on the public health point of view, so something that came up in our group from for a person from East Sussex who's actually from the public health team, and they are leading on the retrofit strategy. So it was quite interesting, and that they are very much involving the community energy groups that are there in the region on that strategy. Rob, anything you wanted to add from your group?
Yeah, some similar themes, to be honest. We had a really good mix of people from councils, well-established community groups, and those just starting out. Frustration with kind of level of involvement from some councils, from those community groups just starting out, a kind of recurring theme around the issue of systems and processes that are very difficult to navigate, and that kind of fragmentation of the system that just makes it very challenging. One council mentioned the difficulty in engaging with local community groups, and we're really interested in the kind of thermal imaging evidence that's been, I think it may have been Justin that did some research around people who have had a thermal imaging assessment done are 5 times more likely to go ahead with retrofit or something along those lines. It may have been come from somewhere else. So yeah, some interesting points there, and funding being a big one. Quite a few people finding funding through Net Zero Hubs and Retrofit West, and struggling a little bit with issues around finding funding for training, which is an interesting one for you and I.
Yes, thank you. Thanks very much, Rob. And then I think finally, if we could just hear from Joseph.
Yeah, lots of similar themes. There were a few local authorities just at the beginning of this journey trying to look at this. I recommended they find their nearest existing community energy group who have done it, and try and get them to come and speak to you and help, because there are hundreds of community energy organisations all over the country, many of which have experience with this stuff. So either via Community Energy in England, Wales or Scotland, for example. The health thing came up as well. I'm aware of quite a few projects where most referrals have come via, for example, the local NHS trust sending a text to everyone with respiratory problems, for example, to address the damp and mold stuff. There was stuff about retrofit not being very good branding, or sounding a bit retro and a bit vintage, and that maybe things like cozy and 21st century homes and all that sort of stuff might be better. And I mentioned the retrofit scale research about how ideally we'd have local multi-skilled integrated teams who can do the whole thing, from the survey to the air tightness to the ventilation to the heat pumps to the everything, all employed by one local multi-skilled team, because about 40% of the costs up to can be all the overheads of all the different contractors and everyone doing the same survey of the same house.
Joseph, I'm going to stop you there just because there's a lot to go through with our speakers, and I want to give people a very short comfort break before we get on to our speakers, if that's all right.
That's great. The one last thing I was going to say is people should check out the National Retrofit Hub as well, which
second that, definitely. There's some great resources on the National Retrofit Hub. As one of the working group chairs, I can definitely say that. So we're going to just do a quick 3-4 minute break. Quickly make yourself a drink, go to the toilet, whatever, and we will be back for our final 2 speakers. We're running slightly behind, but we've got 20 minutes on the York presentation, so maybe that will be a little shorter, and we've got quite a lot of time for Q&A as well, so hopefully we'll be all right.
We'll see what we can do on ours, and kind of a quick trot through. But yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, we'll see how we get on.
It's hard. There's so much to say, I know, and it's really hard to fit it in the time.
I can only do mine in about 5 minutes if you like, because I've only got about 4 or 5 slides. They're all the same anyway.
Don't feel you have to, because it's good to get a Welsh perspective, and I don't want you to feel that your time is limited. Take the time you need. It's fine.
Okay.
If you could put your camera on briefly, just so that I know people are back or not back, that would be great. Okay. Right. So I think we'll start again. I think people are just going to be coming back in now. Our next speaker is Dewi Williams from Cartreffi Clwyd. I've tried to pronounce that right. I probably haven't, but done some really interesting work on retrofit in across Wales. So over to you, Dewi.
Thank you. I'll just try and share my screen. Everyone see that?
Yes, if you put it in presenter view, just the slideshow from the beginning. That's it. Perfect.
Oh, good. Okay. My name's Dewi Williams. I work for Cartreffi Clwyd. Cartreffi Clwyd means cozy homes in English, and I suppose we stole our name from Cozy Homes, Oxfordshire. And we've got our inspiration from them as well. What I want to do is start at the beginning on who we are. We're like an umbrella organisation in name, working with community energy organisations throughout Wales. And we've got we've got 6 or 7 different partners. We're growing continuously, and each partner is equal in themselves, working part-time under the Cartreffi Clwyd organisation, if that makes any sense. Let me go. There you go. Cychwyn. And then we started off 2 years ago with the Community Energy Wales and the Energy Efficiency Group, and we decided to form a website giving advice on retrofitting and how to improve efficiency on your properties. And it was quite successful. So what we decided was to come together and apply for a grant. And we applied for £200,000 from Energy Redress to train some employees, direct employees now from the local community energy organisations as retrofit assessors. And Energy Redress helped pay for this training, and that took about 6 months or so, 9 months to get everybody up and running. And then we were starting to do outreach and work to try and get some work in, and we could subsidise the assessment and the reports. But work was really slow in coming in, and we were just dithering because it cost quite a lot at the time to get a retrofit assessment and report, and there was no funding available to support anybody if they decided to go further and invest in retrofitting. You can spend £30,000-40,000 or so doing a whole house retrofitting project on your home. So work was slow, and then in about October last year, the Development Bank of Wales started a scheme called the Green Homes Wales, which offered £1,000 for each a coordinator and assessor to do an assessment and do follow-up advice and a report and follow through the whole project, overseeing everything, to enable the customer to do their retrofitting project. Now, the Green Homes Wales offered interest-free loans for up to £25,000 for the customer, and various different kinds of grants. So they had access to various grants like the boiler upgrade scheme, etc. And they had a 6 months holiday pay period as well before you had to start paying back. So I must say, this is exclusively now to the able to pay market. So we haven't really touched anything with Eco4 or Eco-Flex. So only the people who can actually afford to retrofit their homes. And this was a huge gap in the market, as you all know, isn't it? So that's kind of primarily where we wanted to focus on. And then work started to come in. We were getting work all over Wales. We've got a partner in Cardiff, we had a partner in Swansea, Pembrokeshire, in the Mid Wales and in North Wales, and we had 2 retrofit coordinators working for us, and each assessor was working for that community energy organisation. We could manage to fund the costs of the assessors and the coordinators through this scheme. And it was successful. It was okay. Sorry, I better go on to the next slide. And we were standing on our own 2 feet, and I think we're kind of unique in the sense that we're not really a company. We're only a name. I work for Cwmarian Renewable Energy, which is based in Pembrokeshire. They decided to host the project simply because they were the most established and they had their own wind turbine and they had the backing behind it. So each of these community energy organisations, they only had like 4 or 5 people working for them, and they were part-time working for us and part-time working for other organisations under grant funding. And it's working quite well. We've kind of done about nearly 200 assessments now and reports throughout Wales. And we've got about 70 customers going through the various stages to retrofit their homes. And our role as assessors and coordinators is that we have no connection with contractors or actually doing the work at all, which is kind of where past 2035 is leading. Is there could be a conflict of interest, as you may know, if the contractor does the coordinating and the assessing and doing the actual work themselves as well, because they'll be judging their own work, won't they? So people will come into us partly because we have a Welsh name, partly we were community energy organisations, we're not for profit, there's no directors, we're local, and we were just getting loads and loads of work, and it's continuing to work now. The workflow now is just ridiculous, and our problem at the moment is finding more assessors and more partners to take the work on that we have got. So it's a successful project in that sense. As you can see on the slideshow, we do the assessments, the coordinators does the report, the customers apply for the Greenhouse Wales loans and grants. We help the customer find local contractors who are suitably qualified to install heat pumps, solar power, batteries, windows and doors, so that they can choose what they want out of the report, because the report kind of summarizes what they should do and give them a rough idea of the costs and what is involved. And the only way they can find out exactly what the project will cost is by going out for various prices. So we recommend 3 different contractors, say, who can do air source heat pumps locally, and then they go out for the 3 prices. We help them then analyse the quotations, make sure everything is above board, making sure that the contractors are fully qualified, and then it's the customer's decision then to go with who they want, and we will back them then if we think it's okay, simply because it's the customer that's paying at the end of the day. And then we then oversee the work, make sure everybody's happy, the work is good standards, and then we lodge the work on Trustmark and close the job off. In theory, it should be perfectly simple. As I was mentioning earlier about past 2030 challenges in the breakout group, it's not easy to find local qualified contractors in this industry. Most of the contractors who have past 2030 accreditations are doing Eco4 and Eco-Flex work, and they're not really interested in the private sector like what we're doing. So it kind of puts people off as well. So a lot of our customers at the moment is just going for solar panels and the battery because it's a quick win and an easy solution to a retrofitting project. But unfortunately, that's not why Green Homes Wales and Development Bank of Wales was formed. It was formed to have a whole house approach, which is what Past 2035 is all about. Now, Green Homes Wales and Development Bank of Wales is still a pilot scheme. It's running until next April, where they're going back to the Welsh Government with feedback from companies like us and other retrofit coordinators around Wales, discussing the solutions and the fundings available and what the problems we've got with Trustmark and these Past 2030 issues and MCS and all that. And then they will double their funding because we've had confirmation of this already, and they're going to drop the pilot title from the Green Homes Wales, and they're continuing for another year. So it's a huge success, and like I said, I think we're unique that we're only a name, and everybody's working for themselves, but paid from the Green Home from us. Sorry, that was a bad timing, wasn't it? Paid from the Cartrefi Clyd pot, if you like. And then the future, we were funded by the Energy Redress grant, like I was saying. That funded for 2 years. That has finished end of August now. We've kind of gone into 2 weeks of self-funded project now with no income other than the Green Homes Wales. We now have to reshape how we're going to charge for our services in the future if anybody decides to go private with us. And we're kind of in a transition period. The income from Green Homes Wales and Development Bank of Wales isn't really quite enough to sustain us long term, because we're not commercial. We don't do the social housing and Eco4 and all that. We haven't got contractors. We're simply assessors and coordinators. So we are going to have to apply for more funding in the near future now to develop Cartrefi Clyd. Maybe Cartrefi Clyd will be independent from Cymru and renewable energy and stand on our own 2 feet. The demand is definitely there. We just want to shape ourselves, develop us, employ more people, and we want every house in Wales to be retrofitted. That's it in a nutshell about Cartrefi Clyd. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dewi. Yeah, I think that whole point about trust, having that brand, having it very clearly a Welsh organisation, and those, you say you're just a brand and a web page, but actually behind that are a load of really good community energy groups doing the work. So thank you very much for that. And then now going to pass on to our final speakers, Rob and Anthony, who are going to be talking about the work going on in York.
Yeah, afternoon everyone. Really good to see everyone, and also hear some of the stories that have gone across the country. It's really encouraging, I think, for me. So I work for City of York Council, and I actually work in effectively the private sector housing team. I'm the head of service for that. But within that, we also deal with a lot of the private sector housing retrofit issues in York and trying to address those. So yeah, this afternoon myself and a colleague of mine, Rob Hargraves, who's from Energy Systems Catapult, are going to talk to you a little bit about energy, or your energy, and the one-stop shop for York. So Rob, would you mind going on to the next slide? So I think for me, it's a really important starting point to understand, I suppose, contextually where retrofits in for us from a kind of political perspective, and for me it always comes down to our council plan, and it's probably be the same for other local authorities here this afternoon. It will be a familiar story, and that we've got 4 prime commitments about what we want to try and achieve, and particularly for me the ones that are relevant here are things on those relating to the health and the health of people in York, but also climate and the impact that's having here in York, particularly as probably people will always see York in the news because we're always flooded. Apparently it never actually really really affects us that much, but it always looks like we're drowning. So it is a real problem that we do have here in York, and something therefore is on our agenda. So in terms of the council plan, beyond and behind that then, if we go to the next slide, Rob, we have some specific priorities which we as a council, in terms of what our councillors have said, this is what they want us as officers to deliver, is really about trying to deliver a health generating city for the children and the adults, people living in York. We want to try and improve education and skills, which is particularly relevant for the retrofit side of things. Particularly, I think for me, it's about us when we're trying to work out how do we do what we do in terms of retrofit to align it with the priorities. It's, well, how can we improve the quality and skills of local contractors in York to deliver the retrofit agenda, because that's a massive skill shortage. That's also then affects the economy and employment, and we want to have a fair and thriving green economy for all. And again, retrofit is kind of quite central to that. Skipping on to the next one, which is about affordable housing. Sorry, if you go back on affordable housing, it's about, we want affordable housing, and that means from my point of view, looking at fuel poverty and making sure that houses are suitable for people to live in, and people can afford to live in them from a fuel perspective, as well as the actual rent side of things. And then the final thing is about sustainability, cutting carbon and enhancing the environment. So I'd imagine, as I say, most local authorities will kind of look at those and go, they sound fairly familiar as priorities. But for me, it's, so how do we actually practically do something off the back of that to help us deliver these objectives and priorities from an officer perspective? So off the back of that, on the next slide, Rob, if that's okay, we then have a series of priority actions that were put together by members in conjunction with officers about what we want to actually practically do in York to help us to get retrofit on the agenda, to ensure that we start meeting what effectively are our overall target, which is become by 2030 for us to be a net zero city from a carbon perspective, which is extremely ambitious. And I think in reality, it's going to be something we're struggling going to do, particularly when you've got the national 2050s target. We are wanting to be ahead of the curve. There are challenges with that. But from our point of view, it's, well, okay, how do we reduce carbon reduction, or how do we reduce carbon in York? How do we reduce energy consumption? How do we improve retrofit expertise and skills and knowledge within York? That was the challenge that we looked at. So on to the next slide, Rob, if we may. What we did a few years ago, we got some Innovate UK funding to look at what the barriers to retrofit are for consumers, particularly in the private sector, particularly for those who are what we're kind of able to pay market, as we've heard mentioned a few times. And the three main things that we've identified are about the cost, the hassle factor, and supplier trust. And that's something which I think, listening to Oxford City of Oxford Council and Oxfordshire County Council, Oxford Council, that was a similar type of things that they were finding. These are primary things that prevent people wanting to get into retrofit. And so, given that we've got an agenda to deliver a net zero by 2030, we understand that there are challenges to how we deliver that from a cost, a hassle, and a supplier point of view. The question is, what can we do as a local authority to overcome those hurdles to meet those targets? So, if we could go on to the next one, please, Rob. So what we did is we decided that we would apply for some funding from the Innovate UK into the second phase of some funding to develop a one-stop shop for York. This being, as I say, to try and address some of these issues, and particularly when you consider in York, probably similar to other local authorities, we've got about 32% of our carbon emissions in York accountable purely and simply from domestic dwellings. And so it is a really important part of the jigsaw on reducing carbon in York and helping us to achieve our agenda. So we looked at that, and we wanted to therefore create a one-stop shop York. And so Rob, I think, is going to then take us on to the next slide, if that's all right. This is how we see the one-stop shop in York fitting in. We're trying to meet the kind of created demand and create a supply network to kind of effectively meet that demand, so that the supply isn't having an under demand, and similarly there's the demand itself is being driven and being able to be met by a supply market. for me, if you can get those in balance, that's what we are trying to achieve. We've been trying to achieve the demand side of things through a variety of different things within our social housing stock, but in the private sector housing field, through existing schemes, which are like loads of other authorities will have done in terms of retrofit schemes. We're just embarking on the Warm Home Circle grant. So that's about partly raising awareness and getting demand there. But what do you do for the able to pay market who don't necessarily have access to that funding? And hopefully, when Rob now shares a little bit about our one-stop shop in York and the Your Energy website, that will assist. These are the partners that were involved, and as you can see, York Council has been instrumental in it, along with the Combined Authority and a number of partners, of which Catapult are one of them. And over to you, Rob, to take you through the next bit.
Brilliant. Thanks, Anthony. And yeah, just echo Anthony's words in saying how fantastic it is to see such great examples from around the country doing amazing work. So very quickly, a whistle-stop tour through the Your Energy project. As Anthony said, it was based on those kind of key challenges, the non-technical issues, the barriers to why people weren't proceeding with retrofits. So we've created an organisation between the partners to develop this real kind of end-to-end support service for the people of York. And we did that in a few different ways. I suppose the central kind of hub for the service is a website. And so that was designed, it's been up and running since around January, where people can find information, get help through the customer journey on retrofit. And through the project, we've also been able to provide free impartial advice to the people of York, retrofit assessments, and project specifications, working with partners, York Community Energy, who have provided that advice and that hand-holding for residents through the process. And we've also worked hard with the supply chain in York, and we've held lots of meetings working with the Combined Authority, developing a supply chain network who have signed up to a framework agreement. And then moving on to number 6 there on the list, the support from Your Community Energy continues. Importantly, it doesn't stop during the process. We've also worked to develop a finance offer to help people who aren't eligible for grant funding and aren't in the kind of able to pay sector. And then really kind of, I don't know if it's kind of unique, but certainly a really interesting aspect of the project is that we've retrofitted 2 properties owned by York City Council, part of their social housing stock, so that the residents of York can actually walk around properties and learn about retrofit, learn about the options for their properties and see and feel it for themselves. So that's happened during the course of the project as well. And we've also created data models to help people decide on the best retrofit options for them. And I'll talk about that a little bit more as we go through. So the finance offer, we worked, and I'm sure if there are questions around this, Anthony's probably better placed to answer them than I am, but it's quite a challenge to come up with finance offers where it works both for consumers, but also for the council, who are kind of part of the consortium for Your Energy, to make sure that something works. And we've identified this solution working with a local credit union, where we feel there's competitive kind of borrowing rates, and you can see some of the key headlines there. Importantly, there's quite a kind of long repayment term. Your interest decreases as your loan balance reduces. There's no setup fees involved. You can repay early. But what's really exciting from my perspective on the finance offer is that there are social and community benefits. So it's a not-for-profit community-owned organisation, and they reinvest those profits locally. So that kind of gives back some of the kind of social impact, as well as the benefits of retrofit in terms of residents saving money, hopefully living in more comfortable and healthy homes. You're also seeing that reinvestment back into the local community. As I mentioned, the website's been developed as the central kind of hub for the service, and you get a kind of hopefully clear kind of customer journey where you're able to find information. It's about breaking down those barriers where people were saying that they weren't able to find trusted advice. Well, here we've got advice on all of the different options for people, hopefully in kind of as accessible language, understandable language as possible. And again, we wanted to make sure that that kind of hand-holding process is there throughout the entire process. So there's the free advice, there's the free home assessment, the free project specification, help with the quotes, and then any kind of follow-up care, aftercare once the project or measures have been installed as well. So that kind of customer support doesn't stop at any point through the journey. And then we've got information on there as well about the available grants that are out there for people who might qualify. So trying to kind of provide that information in an upfront way so that people can get as much information and as much clarity about the process as possible. So I mentioned some of the kind of digital tools that we are embedding within the website. And we've done modelling, working with York City Council around the housing stock in York. We've done really detailed kind of energy modelling on retrofit measures for typical houses and properties in York. And we've developed a front end where consumers can get guidance on the best retrofit options for people living in a house like theirs. So that, again, you get kind of walked through that process and you can get an understandable kind of roadmap, if you like, of the choices and options available to you in your retrofit journey. And as part of the project, I mentioned that we've retrofitted 2 homes. At the same time, we created a building information model of the property. So here is an exact replica of the property that was done. It's a mid-terrace property, as you can see, and we've developed software where on the website, residents of York who aren't able to visit the house in person are able to have a kind of walkthrough of all of the different retrofit options here. So along the bottom, you can see the kind of key components of the retrofit that were carried out as part of the project, whether it's the kind of doors, the air tightness work, suspended floors, all the way through to the mechanical ventilation with heat recovery or the heat pumps or the solar batteries. And you can also look at the property in terms of the kind of approach that you want to do. So at the top, you can see you've got individual measures, but you've also got scenarios, whether you want to take a fabric first approach to the property or a tech first approach. This will enable you to kind of walk through the options. So this is just an example of where, as you are taken through the house, looking at the individual measures. Here in the front room, it's a suspended floor. If you go round to the back of the property, you're looking at a insulation on a concrete floor. And then the final kind of screenshot that I've got for you is a illustration of the kind of staged approach, where it's telling you the options and the steps that you need to take if you're going to take, let's say, a tech first approach or a fabric first approach. And it's talking about the kind of solar and the battery, when the electricity is being stored in the battery, when it's going to be used from the battery, when you can import from the grid at low cost times. And it provides some of that information for residents. Again, this is all about creating engaging ways to inform consumers about the options for their homes. We also did modelling across the city, and residents are able to go in and have a look at the kind of EPC ratings in their local area and understand what's possible in houses that are similar to theirs. And then a few photos of the demo homes themselves. So we showed you the kind of the BIM, the kind of virtual demonstrator of the property that we retrofitted. And this is the kind of what we did in practice. So we worked with a local contractor called Wrapped, who carried out the retrofit for us. And as I mentioned before, we installed solar panels, heat pumps, mechanical ventilation, heat recovery, insulation, You name it, we did it on the property. It was a really intensive retrofit from start to finish, and it's kind of there for residents of York to be able to visit now up until the end of the project in November. And they'll be able to see information panels and screens and displays that help inform them about the process and hopefully give them an idea of the comfort levels that are possible within a retrofitted home. And this is some of the kind of finished results with the solar panels, the insulation and the heat pump in the property. I've been leading on a skills program in conjunction with the project, and this is where we've developed training modules for local community champions, as we called them, and also retrofit professionals working in York. And we've developed 4 training modules. 2 of the modules are looking at how professionals and community champions can work with people in their homes, understanding the kind of pressures that households are under, their capabilities, the time availability, the costs, and various different factors. Another is how to work with vulnerable households. We Energy Systems Catapult have run the Warm Homes prescription, where we're working with vulnerable households and health conditions and retrofitting. So we've got a good deal of learning that's gone into those training modules. And then we've also developed a training module on the kind of foundational building physics. So these at the end of the project are going to be made freely available. We've created training modules that are in person, and we'll be working with FE colleges to provide that training, and also online, where retrofit advisors or community champions just want that kind of basic foundational knowledge about heat and moisture transfer around a home, so that we get a really good understanding of that whole house approach. I think we've seen from research that the general construction apprenticeships around the country are missing that kind of retrofit element, the kind of foundations of building physics, and so we're hoping that this fills that gap in terms of the building physics. And we've also looked at some of the specific property types that are found just in York and developed a training module with Historic England working on that as well. So as I say, that will be kind of linked to the website and people will be able to access those training modules. And for the next steps, I'll hand back to Anthony to go through this.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Yeah, I mean, this project that we've been on, we're getting towards the end of our funding period, which ends at the end of November. So for me, the next three months really is looking about, looking at the demonstrator homes and trying to get those available to members of the public, local landlords. So the local resident landlord association is absolutely a vital part of that, as well as local developers, local estate agents, and also kind of companies involved in plumbing or builders or anything like that, for them just to get a real feel of what that could be done practically. So we have those home tours which are being taken place in September, October, and November. We're looking to have a big kind of main event at the end of November, celebrating what we've achieved, but also launching the kind of the next phase really, which is, how do we incorporate the Your Energy model into the long-term plans for City of York Council from a council perspective, and also working in partnership with the other partners who've been part of the consortium, is how do we create something which is going to have longevity and be sustainable in the long term from a financial perspective. So there are some challenges ahead, but that's kind of really what we're looking at next, and then really just promoting and marketing the Your Energy tool, because for me it's one of the primary things that we as a local authority have identified is the way that we are going to help market and get retrofit becoming the norm in housing across York, and helping us achieve our net zero target and our ambitions for that, and retrofit thousands of homes across York. So as I say, hopefully that gives you a little bit of an understanding of what we've done, where we're at, and I think that's kind of the end of our presentation. If you do want to go and have a look at it, go to the yourenergy.co.uk website. There is a contact us section on there. If you are interested in finding out more, then we would be delighted to speak to you. I think it might be something like hello@yourenergy.co.uk as an email address. But by all means, do have a look at it, check it out, see what you think, and we'd be happy to discuss it with you.
you very much to Rob and Anthony for really impressive kind of holistic work across the whole retrofit challenge. And I can definitely attest to those digital tools. They are really impressive, as well as the skills, the training modules too. Right, I am just going to launch a final poll before you all leave. That would be great if you could answer those the questions that have just come up. But while you're doing that, I noticed there have been some questions for in the chat, which I think have been mostly answered. But if there was anything else, any other questions, particularly for Rob or for Anthony, please do put your hand up or put a message in the chat. Feel free just to concentrate on completing the poll as well. I know that these webinars can be a bit challenging in terms of trying to read chat, listening to things, filling in polls and all the rest of it. So I'm perfectly happy if you just concentrate on the poll.
Cara, I did see a question about how we as a council are trying to ensure that local workforce is included in plans for retrofit. So just a bit of an answer to that. One is that we have, through our lead project funding that we had previously, which finished in March, we did quite a lot of training of local suppliers in certain aspects of retrofit, working with a York College to create courses. And in terms of a supplier marketplace, as part of the kind of Innovate UK Rossi project, we've been developing a retrofit suppliers marketplace here in York, working with people locally, encouraging them to come along to meetings. We've had, I think it's every other month, we've been having a network where they've come together as providers of plumbing, solar panels, you name it. People come in locally to talk about the challenges, sharing what they do and working together to create these connections. So we've been doing a lot of that to try and support that side of things. But I think ultimately, I think that one of the things that people have already said is there is a scarcity of people who are able to do the work to a good standard, and particularly in terms of PAS compliance, that is a challenge. We're not necessarily on this side of things going to say everything has to be PAS based, but it is it's a challenge finding people, and that's what we're trying to work together to try and resolve.
And just a question on related to Femi's question in the chat. Through the procurement, and I don't know if you're involved in the procurement of the government funded programs, have you tried to put any kind of local employment conditions around that procurement, local employment or training?
I think in terms of where it's a local authority purely and simply, yes, we would do. That would be part of our social value as part of the procurement process. The thing that's slightly unique about the Your Energy is it's a kind of a public-private partnership in that we are working with private companies to deliver a one-stop shop for York, which will be a kind of effective a commercial model in the long term. And so in some respects, whilst we can try and encourage that to be part of the requirement, it's kind of, you can imagine that it gets a little bit tricky, and particularly given the scarcity, and York is surrounded by places like Leeds, Newcastle's not a million miles away, so we tend to get people from slightly further afield rather than just being local, but that's partly because they're the only ones currently available. We're hoping that in the long term it will be a little bit more local.
Yeah, thank you very much. Someone just put Lisa just said the poll wouldn't submit. I don't know if other people are having those problems, but it does look like answers are coming in thick and fast, so hopefully other people are able to submit the poll. If you can, I'm aware we are just 1 minute to 4 o'clock, so if you have to leave, please do. Thank you very much to those of you who stuck with it. I think we've had some hopefully useful content, and we will be sharing a recording because I know some people have colleagues that weren't able to attend, and also the slides as well. So thank you very much, but do stay on to complete the poll if you need to.